Today, we are getting Stepfamily caffeinated with blended family frappe, and we are talking about all the tough things.
I'm Cameron. I spent years building my career and creating a life I loved. And when my Prince Charming finally showed up, he had 4 kids in tow. Fast forward through lots of mistakes made and lessons learned, stepfamily life was much more complicated than I realized. If you're looking for help with blended family life, you're in the right place. Welcome to the Stepmom Diaries, where we keep it real as we dish about all the things. This is your weekly dose of blended family inspiration and encouragement. You're not the wicked stepmother, so let me help you find your fairy tale ending. Come on, let's do this.
Welcome. Today is a treat. We have got another one of our Stepmom Summit speakers with us today. Maarit Miller runs Blended Family Frappe, and we are so excited to have her at this year's Stepmom Summit. Maarit, a little bit about her. She is the creator behind Blended Family Frappe. She's a writer, artist, and former single mama turned stepmama. She founded Blended Family Frappe to be a haven for all the blended families out there like ours who are hunkered down fighting against high conflict situations. Maarit has been a mom for 20 plus years, a stepmom for 15 plus, and one of the founding moderators over at the Step Parent Support subreddit. She's been nominated for Best Stepmom Blog and named a top 10 blended family blog. Blended Family Frappe was also listed as one of the best blended family Instagram accounts to follow, and I can second that. Her Instagram is fantastic. If you're not following her, you should be. And my favorite part about Maarit's biography is that she says when she's not running the site, she's probably eating tacos while watching Star Wars. So let's dive in with Maarit. Maarit, welcome back. I'm so excited to have you back today.
Hello. We were just saying in our little, chit chat before the recording started, it's been literally years since we talked.
I know. And I'm so excited about this because you're just like one of my favorite people to follow on Instagram and all the things.
Oh,
and
thank
you.
You.
Put out such good, realistic advice for people that are just really in the middle of the poo.
Yeah. Pull no punches. That's our motto over here at BFAM.
Yes, I love it. Well, so I mentioned in your intro, so Maarit is going to be speaking at the Stepmom Summit, which is coming up from the 25th to the 28th. I'm so excited that she's joining what has turned out to be an amazing group of presenters that we have this year. She's going to be talking there about parental alienation. And so, Maarit, I kind of wanted to, we're not going to get into here what you're going to be talking about at the summit, but I wanted to talk around it a little bit by talking about, well, first of all, I'd like for you to tell folks kind of your story, your family dynamic, how you got where you are. And then I want to dive into how some of these dynamics have affected your relationship.
Sure. How long is this podcast? Just kidding. So I met my now husband, Dan, and we each had a daughter at the same age. They were 7-ish when we met. And so on paper, it was like, oh, well, this is perfect. And I'd been a single mom for a while. And he was not super recently divorced. I think he'd been divorced a couple years at least, which although now in hindsight, not spoiler alert, in hindsight, maybe that was not as, that's in the distant past as I thought it was at that time. A couple years, we're all over it. No, they were not over it. Anyway, it seemed perfect on paper. And I'm also a total kid person. I love kids. I had never really thought about step parenting. It didn't seem like a complicated thing, at all. Just okay, sure. What's one more kid,
Yeah,
and
I like kids. How hard could it be?
Totally. Yeah. And I was just completely unprepared, as I expect everyone listening to the podcast is just I had no idea what I was signing up for. It ended up being such a complex situation. And then, the step parenting aside, I think that things would have kind of been ironed out except for this other factor of high conflict and alienation that kind of entered in. I think it was always kind of there underground, but Dan's ex was difficult. But I didn't know high conflict was a thing back then. And just kind of thought, I don't know, it just seemed like, oh, well, she's not happy. She's not happy about me being in the picture. She's, doesn't want another woman around her kid. Like, I get it. My kid has had stepmoms. Like, I understand that feeling, but also you have to recognize logically, like, no one can take your place as the mom. It doesn't matter if my kid comes home like, oh, my stepmom and I did blah, 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 and she's excited. It doesn't matter. I'm still the mom. Like, that's sacred ground,
you're still mom.
Yeah. But, so I just thought, naively, I was in the perfect position to be this, like, hey, I'm a single mom. I get it as a single mom. You want to be a mama bear. You want to learn about me. Like, great. I agree. I understand that feeling. And I just kind of went overboard to appease Dan's ex and thinking, like, I have been unable to win over my stepkid directly, but maybe if I appeal to her mom, and I'm like, hey, you can see I'm a reasonable person. My intentions are good, I promise. Like, maybe I could get to her that way, because it just became very clear very quickly that my stepkid was going to do what her mom said to do, was very aligned with her mom's wishes, even to the point where go ahead.
No, I'm sorry to interrupt. I was going to say, I love that you're talking about it this way, because I think so many of us fall into that trap of like, well, surely I can reason with her, and surely she'll see that I'm a decent human being, and surely she wants the child to, but that's not always the case.
Right. There's definitely a logical way out of this, right? And we really believe that, but that's because we're logical people. And what we don't understand when we're young and fresh faced step parents is that not everybody thinks like that. And there's this whole section of people that have been dubbed high conflict by Bill Eddy, who, side note, is speaking at the summit. And I'm like fangirling, because finding his work was life changing and family changing for us, as he's like trying to blend our family. He is amazing. And I think he actually coined the term high conflict. Like, I think he's the guy, that high conflict personalities are a thing. And
he's done some amazing work. The high conflict
he really
Institute
has.
Is invaluable.
Amazing. And he, eventually, I forget how, but I eventually did stumble onto his work and sort of learned then, like, well, some people, Dan's ex's goal is not compromise. It's not what's best for the kid. It's for her to have control. That's really her goal. And for Dan to be as involved, I'm doing air quotes on the podcast, but as she felt was appropriate to the relationship she thought he should have with their kid. And, we really believe that, and most of us are certainly capable of putting our petty differences aside and like meeting in the middle. And my dad used to say, the definition of compromise is everyone agrees, but nobody's happy. And I think that that's a common, that's a common ground we can all reach for. Like, I'm not thrilled about it, but
I'm not going to get to 100%, but
Right. But a high conflict person, they want it all their way. And whatever that means, the specifics can vary from situation to situation, and including what we're going to talk about at the summit, which is alienation, which is sort of the extreme version of that. But the bottom line is it's not a positive, collaborative co-parenting relationship. And the solution ultimately is that you need to have better boundaries instead of trying to compromise more to make them happy, because they don't care about being happy. That's actually not their goal. They like being mad, or they like the drama, or they're using the drama and the conflict to remain in control. And that is their goal. And once you understand that, it's it's not easier, but you're making better decisions and more efficient decisions that protect your family and yourself better, because it's not what you thought.
Yeah. Well, so let's talk about the impact, because when you are dealing with a high conflict ex, it's not like it only impacts you at the moment that there's a flare up or at the moment that there's an email or
Right.
whatever. It seeps into your life and it impacts
Yeah.
the whole rest
Yeah.
of the family. So tell me about like how that has impacted you, and also like how you and Dan have been able to navigate this as a couple and together and stay strong and all the things, because that's really hard, right?
Like a good question. How did we? There are some days even now, you know, and our kids are adults now, you know, they're like official adults, like 25. And so we're like, these days are really far behind us now, but we still have days where we look at each other and say, how did we make it through that? Because I genuinely don't know. Like, I mean, part of it, thankfully, like when I look back in hindsight, I really think, boy, were we lucky, because it was a shit show, but it was also like happened exactly in the right order that we stayed together through it. And so there was a lot of drama before we got officially married, but not until we got married. It was like that was some kind of a trigger and things went off the rails. But like as newlyweds and as a person who like I personally just really deeply believe in the commitment of marriage. So I'm like, well, I'm not going to walk away from this, you know?
Yeah.
And so I was like, we're in it, you know, we're in it now under different circumstances, or if things had gone off the rails earlier when it was a newer relationship, maybe I would have made a different decision. But there were so many things that kept us together. And honestly, the number one thing I always say is my daughter was so crazy about him. I just could not bring myself to take that away from her. I just couldn't. And I was like, whatever it costs me, like, I don't care. Don't know, again, in hindsight, if that was the healthiest decision, because if I heard someone else making that decision now, I would say, girl, what your child needs is for you to be mentally well and stable and not so distracted by all of this garbage that, you know, this ex-wife is throwing at you, that you're not able to be present for your kid, for your own kid. Mm-hmm. And so like that was a major challenge that I faced. Dan and I as a couple really struggled with, I mean, the whole way through until he finally grew some boundaries, really struggled with his continued choices that undermined our family, and the plans that we tried to make together to do things. And he just repeatedly made choices that undermined that in favor of trying to keep the ex happy or his kid happy. And for stupid
but I hear
crap,
that so often.
You know,
I think that's
I do too.
Like so many people experience that.
Yeah.
So how did y'all navigate that? Because that is something that I think a lot of stepmoms, you know, in the same situation experience, whether it's like, you know, a boundary of like, the ex calls and says, I need you to take kids this weekend. And you know, they say, okay, we'll cancel our plans and do it. And you're like, what?
Right.
You know?
And then and then I'm over here like, I spent 4 months picking out the perfect weekend for us to do the thing and plan the stuff and
you're
do
the
the
bad
whatever.
person because you like don't want the kids to come.
Like you didn't even check with me.
Yeah.
Yeah. And for us, the major problem was we would have plans as a family, like all 4 of us. And then he would make a decision that traded his time away. So I'd be like, well, what the hell? You know, and then we didn't want his kid to miss out. And I didn't want to either. I'm like, well, no, we're building this family. And so we wouldn't do the thing. And in some ways, I made it worse. I enabled it by being flexible. You know,
But I think that's our first inclination as stepmoms, right? It's like we put all this pressure on ourselves to like prove that we belong there.
Yeah.
And so we're like, oh, it's okay. It'll be okay. Like, we'll make it work, you know?
And eventually I just, I had to realize that I couldn't want us to be a family more than Dan wanted it. You know, like my ability to succeed as a stepmom stopped at his ability to support me in that role and be committed to the future we were trying to build together instead of continuing to prioritize the first family. Mm-hmm. I think that we made the same mistakes I think most people in a new stepfamily make, which is we believed in, gosh, how do I want to say it? We wanted to continually prioritize what was best for our kids, but like to a fault, not realizing like kids have to be unhappy sometimes. It is normal for kids to be unhappy sometimes. And you can't ensure that they're going to be happy every second of every day. And I think we get very guilty consciences, especially for children of divorce.
Totally.
Like, oh gosh, they've already been through so much. I want to make things easy. Like, those kids still need parenting.
And like, it's okay if they're bored for a couple of hours. P.S. We grew up in the 80s and 90s, so.
Yeah, honestly. And also, it is okay to say no to things that cause stress and friction within your marriage. Like, let's start with that, within your romantic relationship, but also within your stepfamily. And like, I think about decisions we made, like we were going to this food festival thing, and found out it was our week with Dan's kid, and found out that his ex was planning on being there the same night. And she's like, oh, well, why don't I meet up with you? And, so I can give our daughter a hug real quick. And I won't interrupt. And of course we're like, sure, that's the co-parenting thing to do, right? That's
like, our listeners can't see, but
I know. Don't go down into that basement.
Don't open the door.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, and actually that was kind of the incident that woke Dan up, because it was such a disaster. She didn't come when she said she was going to. My stepkid was like almost in hysterical tears, just like so keyed up and waiting for her mom to show up. And of course, she's not paying attention to anything that we want to do, and then we couldn't leave because they were running late, but we had said, well, we're going to meet up with you. And looking back in hindsight, it was like such a series of bad decisions made with the best of intentions, but it's not like that ever. Even if she hadn't been high conflict, that was undermining our family repeatedly, all in the course of one evening, and just reinforcing to our kids, both of the kids, again and again, we're not a real family. We don't really matter. Our time together isn't worth protecting, and they're growing up with that message. And guess what? Tying this back actually into alienation, that kind of sows the seeds of us being the less important family. We don't matter as much. We're not, real the way the alienating parent is real to them. And we didn't start out with alienation, but alienation is not possible with those seeds of high conflict that are sown initially, stuff like that. So it's so important to keep choosing for your stepfamily and show the kids that you're choosing for your stepfamily. Like, no, we're a family now. And I can't tell you, eventually Dan's ex just took it way too far. And Dan at that point was just like, we're done. We're only talking in writing now. And I'm not going to answer your phone calls. And he got hardcore, and he'd been very flexible on the custody arrangement stuff before. But then he was like, nope. And went back to court and set to limit how many phone calls his ex could have with his kid, because the phone calls ended up being so just these drawn out, tearful, like 3 hours that kid would be on the phone. And it was like, we're trying to have dinner as a family. I know, it's crazy, right? Why did we put up with that? But he just really, and then when he started saying to his kid, basically like, well, I'm sorry that you're unhappy, but these are the rules at our house. And, well, I'm sorry that you don't like that, but Maarit is part of the family. And once he started just owning it, shit got better so fast. It was crazy. And it is, I always say about Dan, it was kind of a Dumbo's feather situation. Like, he had the power all along. He could have done that all along.
Power was inside you.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And he could have flown. He didn't need that feather to have boundaries, but he
what did it
sure
take?
did.
Was it like how, and not to get say however much you're comfortable getting into, but did y'all have like a lot of conversations? Like, was it causing tension between you and you're like, why
always,
are you not, backing us up here?
Yeah. Like even when I first met him and we were just like, we weren't really talking about any of that stuff yet. But he had his kid, not often. I mean, it was like every other weekend, maybe. And then half of those were canceled or rescheduled at the last minute. And then I think he had like an overnight a week or whatever. And I think somehow it came up that we were talking about it. And I'm like, well, and he's like, well, I just need to, I've got to get out of the job I'm in and make more money so I can go back to court because, I want to be spending more time with my kid. I'm like, oh, well, what do your papers say? He's like, well, they say 50-50. I'm like, well, then you have 50-50. Why aren't you taking it? He's like, well, no, it's not that simple. I'm like, you don't need to go back to court. Like you already have,
right. Like you have right. You just need to use it.
Yep. And after probably about a year of me saying that he did, why did he go back to court for child support adjustment? Because he's like, well, I'm not paying more. I don't know. Something that he was paying way over. And I think that was part of the deal. Like, how about this? What if you see your kid less and you pay more in child support? Why did he agree? Who knows? But I think he was trying to do right by his kid. He was trying to be the good guy. And he's kind of since said, I think maybe in my head, part of me thought if I did everything she wanted, maybe we'd get back together because she'd see that I was committed to like doing right or whatever. And so he was trying to be generous, and it bit him in the ass. I think eventually, even Dan, nicest guy on the planet, who never has a bad word to say about anyone, honestly, like he's such a good human. Even Dan finally hit his limit, and that's saying something.
Yeah.
So I think it was just a process of realizing, first of all, that he was being treated unfairly. He didn't have anyone in his life who was really empowering him to stand up for himself, Like, I think he did have some friends who were like, dude, you're getting screwed. But he was just like, oh, ha, 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 you don't know what you're talking about, And then eventually he just kind of realized this sucks. I want to see my kid more. Like, why is this happening? We had some, like, as an example, I think this was one of the wake up things. His kid wanted to be on swim team, and we were living in Las Vegas at that time. And we were up on we were down on the south end of Vegas, and his ex was on the north end. So it was honestly like an hour and a half drive between our two houses. And she wanted to put their daughter on swim team in their neighborhood. And I'm like, well, that means you're not going to get her 50-50 because swim team, it was during the summer, so there was no school. It meets at like 7 a.m. Oh, yeah. We can't get her there at 7 a.m., And I'm like, look, there's a swim team next to us. Why don't we just have her in swim team here? But it meets in the evenings. So she could come here in the evenings, or we could do like week here, week there, and he just wouldn't commit, wouldn't do anything, missed the sign up date for our swim team. And then by default, and then of course he waited so long that his daughter was like, I really want to be on swim team. I'm so excited, and because her mom kind of talked her into it. It wasn't like she had a passion for swimming. And we barely saw her that entire summer. And I think that was a real breaking point for Dan. Like, wait a second, so is the goal to have her in swimming? Or, because if the goal is for her to be swimming, that can be accomplished without us giving up time with her.
Right.
But is that really the goal? And the answer is no, it's not. The real goal was less time with your dad for, reasons.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's, I feel like that's really common too. I mean, not to reinforce gender stereotypes, but, I feel like men are less likely to be super vocal and talk to people about, talk to other people about what's going on. And so then they don't necessarily have the support network of people that are encouraging them to stand up for themselves.
Yeah. Well, I think also, for Dan, he genuinely didn't realize or believe he was being taken advantage of. I mean, it took a long time for him to finally accept that. And to be fair, it is really hard to accept that about someone you were involved with for so long, like, wow, did I know you at all? You know, I felt like that when my daughter's dad moved out. I was like, I can't believe I had a kid with someone who would leave 2 years later. Like, are you kidding me? You know, and like, how could I have been so wrong about him? And so I think a lot of that is kind of owning your own shit and like, what does it say about you that you were with someone who's this awful and you were with them for however long, and like you don't want to look directly at it? And I think all of these things are true. Yeah. And then, you know, as Dan likes to say, quoting him so much, I should have just had him with me on that podcast. But Dan likes to say, you know, there's recognizing the thing is a problem, but then there's doing something, knowing what to do about the problem. And they're two separate steps. And so he recognized it was a problem. And then he was like, well, now what? How do I move forward? And, you know, when we were going through this, it was not like today where there is so much information online. I still feel like maybe it's not quite enough, but there's a lot of information online about step families and blending and even high conflict and alienation.
Yeah, there's so much more than there was when I started.
When I started, there was nothing. There was like, how did I end up even finding about alienation? I don't remember, but there wasn't a website or anything. It was a book in the library or something, like one single book. And that was it. There just was not the information out there in those days that there is out there now. And in fact, it really wasn't until even just a few years ago that we kind of connected the dots to like, wait a second, your ex wasn't just difficult. Like she was straight up abusive, dude. But we don't realize, if you're from a pretty functional like childhood, like I am, I didn't know what abuse looked like. I didn't know how many different flavors that can have. I didn't know what emotional trauma was or what that looked like, you know, like now looking back, I'm like, oh, so many red flags. There were so many of them, but I didn't know what those looked like. And so I think we really like, yes, be informed. But it doesn't serve anybody to beat yourself up for it. You've got to give yourself grace for like, we only know what we know. We knew what we knew at the time, and we did the best we could with the tools we had. And I honestly do sometimes have my days where I'm doing this work and I have the website and the Instagram and stuff. And I sometimes have days like I'm so happy to be helping other people, but you know, that doesn't take me back in time to save my own kids or our own family, you know? Like we're always going to have this history. And I so wish I had learned all of this sooner to protect their childhoods more, you know, because my kid was really affected too. You know, it wasn't just Dan's kid impacted by all of this. Yeah. And, but somehow I can't explain it. Somehow it did work out and we kind of made it through the other side. And the kids now are like, my stepdaughter just a couple of years ago apologized to me. It was like, I'm so sorry. I was so awful to you for so long. And I'm like, I know. I was like, me too. I'm sorry too. I really messed up in so many ways. And we just really had a good heart to heart.
That's amazing. That gives much hope for people out there that are dealing with this.
Yeah. The longer I do this, the more stories I hear like that. And
and if you think about it, kids are only kids for 18 years.
Exactly.
And their brains, when they're that age and this stuff is happening with the adults in their life, their brains aren't even fully developed. So they don't even they don't know if they're coming or going. They don't, they think they know everything, but they don't. And I think once they hit that mid-20s mark and their brains are finally, fully functional. And a lot of times they start to do a little bit of self-work and stuff like that, there is hope, I think, for.
Yeah. Or even they're in therapy and their therapist is the one who's like, dude, that's fucked up. Yeah. Oh, sorry. I forgot about whether swearing is okay on your podcast.
That's okay. We're good.
Okay, good.
Well, so before we wrap up, one piece of advice, if you were talking to a stepmom that was going through what you have been through, what's the one thing, since we are talking about looking in the rearview mirror and like things that we would do differently, what's the one thing you would tell them to do to keep their relationship on track with their husband or partner or whatever?
Educate yourself is really the number one, my number one piece of advice. Because once you I think as step parents in general, I think particularly women, we're sort of socialized to blame ourselves. And
oh my God, totally.
It isn't. So if things aren't right in our step family and we're having trouble blending, we think it's our fault because we're the newcomers. And, we must be doing something wrong then. And if we just try,
Disney hasn't helped much with that, right?
Totally. And it's like, not having any accurate representation of step parenthood out there is a little bit of a challenge. And, we already have such unrealistic expectations for our mothers and for women in general, like shocker that extends to stepmoms too. And then I think is maybe exponential, like even worse. And, but once you learn that it's not you're not failing, it's the situation. And virtually every step parent goes through a learning curve of figuring out, maybe this role isn't what I thought it was going to be. How do I make it work for me? Like parents go through that too, but we're just, as a society, we're always really supportive of them. And like, oh, well, here's what helped me with my newborn. And here's a lasagna. And, why don't you go take a nap when the baby naps? And like, we understand that self-care is so necessary for new parents, but like, damned if we are supportive of new step parents. It's like, well, you knew what you were getting into. Like, no, we didn't.
Oh my God. Absolutely.
So we have to educate ourselves. And then by extension, we actually need to educate our partners, because we cannot succeed in this role without the help of our partners. And that is even more true if there's high conflict, because you really need to be able to stand together as a team and face the problem together.
I love that advice. That is so spot on. And what a perfect segue for us to plug again the Stepmom Summit, which is coming up April 25th, so that we can all educate ourselves.
You cannot have enough information about step parenting, in my opinion.
Well, Maarit, tell everybody where they can find you. And I want to put a plug in for you, because I was like lurking around your website earlier and I didn't realize that you're doing these cute step parent stickers.
I am.
They are so fun.
Thank you. Yeah, I did. Like I have one on you guys can't see it, but we're actually on a video call. I have my little part stepmom, part unicorn sticker on my water cup. That sticker shop was actually Dan's idea. But yeah, I guess I'm like, step parenting, but let's make it more fun with stickers.
I feel so like cute. And y'all, if you go on Etsy and look for Blended Family Frappe, there's some really, it's like her Instagram account. It's very clever, but like, there's one that says, I've got it up right now. No, actually, this is not what I signed up for.
Right.
I love it. Wicked awesome stepmom. Stepmom AF. These are great.
I think that a lot of the stigma, our internalized crap about step parenting, is because of the social stigma and unrealistic expectations. And so we hide that, right? But if we can kind of come out of the closet as stepmoms and step parents and just say, wicked stepmom, let's try wicked awesome stepmom, I just think that will go a long way toward changing the narrative around step parenting, I
love it. Absolutely.
Sure. Stickers can absolutely do that. I'm positive. Anyway, so you can find me online now on Etsy, but also blendedfamilyfrappe.com. And it's the same on Instagram and yes, Etsy now also.
Excellent. Well, Maarit, thank you so much. This was so fun. So good to see you again.
Yeah, you too, Cameron.
And we'll see you at the Stepmom Summit. So excited.
Okay. Sounds good.
That's it for this week. If you've enjoyed our chat, I hope you'll help spread the word. Share this episode with friends and head on over to wherever you listen to podcasts and leave me a review. And don't forget, for more great stepmom content, head on over to thiscustomlife.com and follow me on social media. Just search This Custom Life on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and Pinterest. Until next time, you keep being you and know that we are in this together. See you here next week.